You don't have a personal brand. You are a brand. You are a living being. Everyone has something to say, has a thought, has achieved something in their life, and has something to offer value to the world. That is what a personal brand is.
The truth is, before you ever speak up, post, lead, or show up, you've already decided who you're allowed to be. That decision shapes everything.
My biggest fear when I first started putting myself out there was, I'm going to piss somebody off, I'm going to upset someone, I'm going to say the wrong thing. But at the end of the day, those people don't pay my mortgage. I pay my mortgage. And I wanted to make sure that I had this safety net. When you're running a 100-mile race, you have to expect that you're going to get blisters. You have to expect the pain. So it's the same thing with putting yourself out there. You have to expect that it's going to be uncomfortable.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inspired Authority. Most people think visibility is about strategy, content, consistency, maybe even confidence. But what if the real reason people don't show up isn't external at all? What if it's the story they're running in their own mind? Because the truth is, before you ever speak up, post, lead, or show up, you've already decided who you're allowed to be. That decision shapes everything. Today's conversation is about the internal world, the one that quietly dictates how you show up externally. I'm joined by Melanie Borden, author of Theater of the Mind, where she breaks down how the internal narratives we carry shape our leadership, visibility, and authority long before anyone else sees us. Because personal branding isn't about being seen. It's about being aligned enough to be seen truthfully. This conversation is for anyone who knows they're capable of more, but hasn't fully stepped into it yet. Melanie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So Melanie, before we get into the incredible work that you're doing and all about the book that you wrote, who are you today outside of everything that you've built?
Mom. I mean, that's who I am outside of work. I'm mom. I have 2 kids that are 11 and 12, 2 daughters, and I have a rescue dog, Athena. So I am mama to the 3 of them. That's who I am outside of work.
I love it. What's something about you people wouldn't expect based on how you show up publicly?
Oh, this is a great question because I have tattoos and a lot of people would never know that I have any body art at all. And I do.
I love that because same. So I placed all of my body art intentionally where I can show up and look like prim and proper, like Audrey Hepburn, or I can show up like hardcore, ready to go, ready to mosh because that's like my vibe.
Yes. Yes. Well, we have that dark and moody. We both color coordinated the black and we love the same color assets. And yes. So not surprised.
So Melanie, you talk a lot about the internal theater. First of all, what does that mean? And where would you say that identity gets shaped for most people?
So that's a really good question. My book came from watching very smart, capable, and successful people underestimate the value of what they know. You know, they could command a room of 1,000 people and get up on stage. But when it came to writing a blog or a newsletter or a post on LinkedIn, they would really freeze and they would be very, very self-conscious, and they were really struggling with the things that they want to say and that they can say because they were going through essentially this loop in their head of who's going to be seeing it? Is it said the right way? And a lot of different fears come up that I started noticing from those who I was working with and on discovery calls before they would take the leap, or even those who I've worked with and I've built strategies for, and then they never take the next step to implement the strategies. So it's really just about, your how you view yourself is very different than how the world views you. And a lot of times when you're putting yourself out there, you have to go through some of this internal conversation with yourself that doesn't get talked about a lot. People don't talk about what it's like to post something and for no one to see it and no one to acknowledge it. Or the people who are acknowledging it are coming to you and saying things that are negative and what that process is like. So your identity, your visibility, the psychology behind it, it's all interconnected.
Wow. So it's interesting because I think that's what really separates the people who can get so far in life where you're like, that's not realistic for me, from the people who kind of play small. It's that, like, the knowing how to be so confident in the value of what you know that you talked about. So that's really interesting. The other thing that I've heard about is leaders showing up and they're so focused on like how I'm being perceived that they can't actually get the value in their brain out of their mouth because they're focused out here, like on the external versus the internal, what I know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what happens now is leaders of companies are shaping culture, they're shaping trust with investors, they're shaping recruiting, partnerships, market credibility, all the things, not to mention their peers or people from the past. They're evaluating them before any meetings have ever happened. So they're being consciously aware, but a lot of times they're holding back so much that it completely prohibits them from being able to, build in public or to be able to just put themselves in the position where they can gain the trust from their company's audience. So they're an actual person on paper versus having a faceless company.
Yeah. How did all this start for you? Like, we're talking about something that takes a lot of people a long time to realize that they're too focused on the external, not enough focus on the internal. And then you wrote a book all about internal narratives and how you show up and you do all this branding work. Like, tell me how all of this came to life for you and why you started doing the work that you're doing and why you wrote the book that you wrote.
Sure. So I've been working in sales and marketing my whole career. And in late 2019, I had presented a strategy where I was working. I was working as a VP of marketing. I was working in automotive retail, but I worked for an entrepreneur who had other businesses outside of automotive. And there were about 80 plus people who were on the client facing team who I put together a plan for them to leverage their personal brands on LinkedIn and to start creating video content and to really start leveraging their personal brands and really treating it like a CRM versus just, not doing anything. And so we started doing that. I got buy-in from everyone, and then the pandemic happened. And at the time, I was not putting myself out there as much. I had just started with LinkedIn with myself. I mean, I'd been on the platform since probably 2013, but I wasn't really posting intentionally. There was no reason for being. It was just, I'm going to just show up and just share a little bit of what I've done with my career. But I started noticing that people were using LinkedIn as a social platform like you were seeing on, Twitter X now or on Instagram or Facebook. And I thought to myself, this is something that I really need to be focusing more on. When the pandemic happened, it really pushed me because I didn't want to have to then lose my job and then have to start over. And I didn't lose my job, but I watched everyone around me lose their job. And it really pushed me. Instead of commuting, I was on LinkedIn. All of my free time, I was on LinkedIn. And it wasn't that I was looking for another job, but what I was doing was I was presenting myself and I was networking like crazy. And I was talking to as many people as possible. And I was posting every day. And one thing led to another. And about a year later, I got an offer to go work at another company and I took it. And probably after about 60 days of working there, something started happening to me where I really had to make a decision. I wasn't loving where I was at. I also started getting these messages from people saying, "Can you do for me what you did for yourself?" And it wasn't just once in a while I was getting a message like this. I started getting inundated with messages like this. And so I was having really rapid growth. I went from having like 2,000 connections on LinkedIn to like 50,000 in a year. And so I just became very visible to a lot of industries, to a lot of people that I didn't know. I would have never known without LinkedIn. And it was a lot of fun. And I made a decision one day that I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to start my own business. And that was in 2021. In July of 2021, I just quit my job. I had no plan. I just knew that I wanted to do my own thing because enough people were reaching out to me, did not have a business plan. And I planned to just do marketing consulting. And it took a few months, but I finally got into my flow. I started building my business. One thing led to another. I was able to scale to an agency. And since then, I mean, there have been so many things that have happened to me in my career, all of these different awards and moments and relationships and clients and opportunities that I never would have had I not started showing up on LinkedIn in 2020 the way that I did. And that's really the story. I don't know, is the short story long? But that is the story of how I really got started with it. And, there are still people that I interact with today that don't get it. They don't get it. They think that it's unique to me because I'm a woman or because of the field of work that I'm in. And it's just not the case. I mean, it's just not. To me, I didn't want to focus on Instagram because I wanted to have immediate impact on my career. And at the time, Instagram, I had felt didn't have that same impact. Now, maybe it does today. Maybe it is important to be on Instagram. If that's where your audience is, sure, it's definitely important to be there. But for me, I felt I want to get in front of the people that are decision makers, the people who have budgets, the people who can hire me. I can see who they are. I can see who they're connected to. I can connect with them. I can reach out to them. We can have conversations where in other social platforms, you're really limited. People can be private. I mean, you can be private on LinkedIn too, but anyone can send anyone a message as long as you have premium. And so it just felt so natural to me. And it has been a part of my life for the last 6 years. And, we go through our ups and downs like every relationship. I get mad at it sometimes because of the algorithm. I'm sure it gets mad at me too for, not liking certain posts. But overall, I think that every single person on planet Earth who deals with people, which is all of us, needs to be on LinkedIn.
Let's talk to the people who don't get it for a moment, because you said a lot of people don't get it, and I'm observing that. Why is personal branding so important, regardless if you're in a corporate job, you own a business, whatever it may be? Why is personal branding so important in today's day and age?
I'll give you an example that I was taught at a very young age, and maybe you were too, and maybe someone listening also. My parents always said, you want to save your money for a rainy day in case something happens. Then when I bought a house, they were like, got to keep saving because you never know. In New Jersey, we have septic systems. You might have a septic issue. Your roof might break. Something might happen to your house. You want to make sure that you have that protection for yourself in case something happens. That's the same concept of you don't have a personal brand. You are a brand. You are a living being. So every single person who is a being, which you are, I am, you are, anyone listening, everyone has something to say, has a thought, has achieved something in their life, and has something to offer value to the world. And to me, that is what a personal brand is. It's who you are. It's the essence of your being. And for someone who is nervous about why they should do it, you can do things in a way where you're not sending off red flags. But if your company closes, if you lose your position, if your company hires someone else instead of promoting you, if you are looking to switch industries, everyone has something to say. And actually, the more experience you have is actually a benefit because you're coming from a place of knowledge and experience. And there's a lot of companies right now, specifically in tech, that are laying people off because they're leveraging AI systems instead. And so your personal brand is such a huge value add. It's such a differentiator because so many people are reaching to AI to help with their personal brand, but your perspective, your stories, what you bring to the table, what you learned in that meeting 15 or 20 years ago, all of that is so important and it brings so much value to the table. And that way, my biggest fear when I first started putting myself out there was I'm going to piss somebody off. I'm going to upset someone. I'm going to say the wrong thing. But at the end of the day, those people don't pay my mortgage. I pay my mortgage. And I wanted to make sure that I had this safety net. And so from woman to woman, from professional to professional, you are creating a safety net for yourself when you have visibility online, because then you are looked at as more than just a potential candidate. You are someone who is living and breathing, and it's documented online too, which, as you know, it's being looked at right now, being discoverable and understood and trusted.
Trust. Wow. Trust is a big one. Let me write that down because I want to dive into the trust. Interviewing and hiring in today's day and age is very different than it used to be. And so being able to see what somebody is doing when I get a resume in front of me helps make all the difference in terms of, do I actually want to talk to this person? And let's be honest, I do see people on LinkedIn that have been out of work for 9 months, 2 years. They're still not displaying their value online. And so I couldn't agree with you more. And then breaking through the AI, that's a whole nother conversation.
I mean, people are really afraid of doing the wrong thing. Just like there's a lot of startup founders who are afraid to talk about what they're building because they're afraid if they say the wrong thing, they're going to look stupid and an investor won't potentially invest with them. It's the same thing with employees. A lot of times people are nervous. If I say the wrong thing, if I do the wrong thing, am I going to get fired? Or is it going to eliminate my ability of being promoted? Or is it going to make me seem different and I'm not going to be part of the culture within the company that I'm working for? So there's all those little things. And sometimes really the fear of being seen and the fear of being yourself is something that's not really accepted in corporate America. A lot of people can't necessarily just be themselves. I mean, I find that I'm myself, I work for myself. And the clients that want to work with me, they find me, but they're finding me based on the work that I do. But I'm also at the same time showing up as me and, having thoughts and having opinions and just knowing that it's not an ego thing, it's a visibility thing, it's infrastructure to how you will be found and discovered and all the things that I mentioned before.
When you talk about fear, and I know you also talk about overthinking, over preparing, waiting to feel ready, what do all of those things actually protect? Like, how do those things show up in someone's life? What does it actually protect in their life?
Humans are just genetically wired to protect themselves. So if I'm nervous and if I'm about to get on a podcast or if I'm about to go on stage and I start feeling my heart rate go up and I start sweating and I'm nervous, my body thinks that it's the same thing, me going on a podcast or on a stage, as I'm in a jungle and I'm being chased by 5 jaguars. So you're just really protecting yourself for safety. And a lot of it also having a safe psychological environment that someone can be in for who they work for. So that way they feel confident that they're representing the company and sharing their thoughts, and it's benefiting the company for the leadership team getting speaking invitations or investor attention or media requests or partnerships or whatever it is. But there's a lot of overthinking, and a lot of times someone might not necessarily identify it as fear. It could just be you're deferring it, you're giving it to someone else, you're handing it over to another team member. You're saying, all right, well, after this milestone or after our product launches or after this or after that, I'm going to do it then. Or when this happens in my life, after I get this speaking invitation, after, you got to just do the thing. And a lot of times people just don't like to do the thing because it's scary and it's hard. I saw this video a couple days ago from Jesse Itzler. I don't know if you know who he is. He's married to Sarah Blakely. And he was talking about pain and what you go through as an entrepreneur. And he compared it to running, a 100-mile race. Like when you're running a 100-mile race, you have to expect that you're going to get blisters. You have to expect the pain. So it's the same thing with putting yourself out there. You have to expect that it's going to be uncomfortable. A lot of us, myself included, were born before the year 2000. And so if you have a 19 in your birth year, you weren't brought up with all of this technology that it's very easy. Like my kids are 11 and 12. It's very easy for them to just use any app and device and they just get it. And when it comes to those of us who were born in the 1900s, we look at things differently, and things that are happening in real time, like talking about leveraging your personal brand and showing up as a representative of your company online is just something, it's a new muscle to flex. It's something that it can easily be learned, but the only way you learn it is by getting the reps in to do it.
What advice would you have for people who feel like they're capable of doing it, but they are scared? They don't know how to get started. They don't want to necessarily show up and be cringe or be, perceived. What advice would you have for those people?
So for those people, the first thing that I would say is really understand why you're doing it. Because if you don't have a reason for why you want to show up, it's hard to anchor yourself to something. So that would be number one. Come up with your reason why you're doing it. Number two is everyone has the ability to use the internet. Okay. And if we're talking about one platform in particular, if we're talking about LinkedIn, or if we're talking about, searching around and finding who shows up as what, find someone who you are drawn to, that you are interested in their style, you like how they show up, and they could be your mentor from afar. Doesn't have to be someone you know. And I say mentor because they're doing it already. And that way you can model what you're doing and find any gaps that you might see with them. And also, this person could be in your industry. This could be someone who's already showing up in your industry and you like what they're talking about and you like their style, and start building your plan. And then when it comes to, a career platform like LinkedIn, what I would say is this: every single person on LinkedIn has the ability to go and download a PDF of their profile. Okay, so then you take that PDF, you upload it into, Claude or ChatGPT or Perplexity, whatever platform you use. I like all three. I use all three interchangeably. But if you are really trying to figure out how you want to position yourself, start there. Upload it. Tell it what you're looking to do. Find that person whose style you like, and understand that people, if they don't understand who you are, what you do, who you work with, the results you get, you're really limiting yourself from the equation of being chosen. Because if you're not there, you're not giving someone to choose something from you.
As you were talking, the why you're doing it, I think it's important to call out having a lens of others in that thought, right? So, what I'm thinking about is if I'm just showing up for myself, that's not really valuable to the rest of the world. But if I'm showing up with a message that has impact for others, then first of all, it's a little less scary because it's not about me anymore. It's about everyone else. And people are more likely to resonate with that and to want to follow along and to want to hear more. Like, what are your thoughts about maybe advice for the introverts, the people that are scared to show up because they're so focused on themselves versus the external audience or the impact they can bring by showing up?
So you have to reframe it for yourself. So I'm not exactly introverted, but I'm not exactly an extrovert. I'm somewhere like a hybrid, depending on the situation I'm in. Some rooms I'm more quiet, other rooms I'm louder. Depends on who I know and how I'm feeling. But what I'll tell you that a great reframe that I stick to, that I talk to clients through is no, this is not about you. This is about serving others. You have to have a servitude attitude when it comes to this. If you make it all about yourself, I mean, at one point in 2020, it was crazy, the online platforms between Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, everybody was posting the craziest things ever because it was crazy town. And so you want the content to be more about the reader and how your content will help them. Yes, it's good to give context. It's good to talk about your story. Storytelling is selling. You know, that's one of the core principles that I really believe so strongly in is that really stories will sell without you having to. But it is about others. It is about helping serve others because at the end of the day, whatever we're doing is if we reframe it to helping others, it will come through. If we're acting out of desperation, a lot of times people don't like the idea of putting themselves out there because it's uncomfortable. The things we talked about, they feel cringe. They're thinking about themselves. They're afraid of what might happen. But then if they get laid off, but then they want to write a book, but then they want to be a speaker, but then they decide that they're going to switch industries. And then all of a sudden they need it and it's so urgent. And it's really hard to build from a place of urgency because urgency always shows. I mean, I remember being in sales and, having months that weren't great. And it was like the second I relaxed, I hit my revenue number. The second I stopped thinking about that number, I would hit the number. And it's just really about thinking how you can serve others in your audience and, having those tactical pieces as a part of your overarching puzzle that you can do once your stuff is out there. And that, if you have a newsletter, if you have a blog, if you're posting on whatever social platform you want to post on, what happens after that is also really important in addition to serving others. So that way you have it buttoned up where if someone does come through and say, hey, we have this position open, we would love to have a conversation with you. Make it easy for someone to contact you because if that comes through, of course, why not? And then it all comes full circle.
Yeah. Opportunities show up when you show up, but they can't find you if they don't know where you are.
Right. Exactly. Definitely.
So you said something else that I wanted to dig into. You talked about mentors, even if it is from afar, right? You're watching somebody in the position that you want as an example. One piece of advice I was given was don't take advice from people who haven't done what you're trying to do. Have you ever experienced that in any of the coaching or any of the work that you've done where people are afraid to do something because someone told them that they couldn't, or they're so scared of the opinions of people who haven't been where they're trying to go?
Yeah. I mean, it happens a lot. I would say it happens more to women than men. At least women admit it more than men do. But I think that there's a lot of people who have been brought up with certain narratives, or they have a significant other spouse in their life that might not necessarily understand or value why they, want to do the things that they're doing. So it's you have to be a little mentally stronger, or at least compartmentalize the things that other people say. But I mean, it's definitely something that I've heard before. But what I'll tell you is that a lot of times people think things and it's just us thinking it. And it's not necessarily the reality of what's happening. There's so much going on right now in the world that everyone's got something. So if you think it's something that has to do with you, most likely it's not. Likely it's just someone's just got a lot going on and they're just overwhelmed.
That makes such a good point about when people are almost projecting. They're projecting their fear, they're projecting their sense of reality on you, and then it stops you from progressing because you're listening to people who are projecting.
Yes, exactly.
So you've said we're all essentially directing our own story. What happens when people don't take control of that role?
I mean, when you don't take control of it, you're essentially letting other people say who you are and what you're doing and where you're going. I don't know about you, but I certainly don't want anybody else to tell me who I am and the things that I can't do. I know what I know. And if they don't know it, then they don't know it. Has nothing to do with me. It has to do with them. So I think that for everybody who's listening, it's so important to just be rooted and confident in your abilities and your knowledge, because maybe someone is making, I mean, everyone has their own history, their own reason for being, their own experiences that shape how they act and how they're projecting into the world. That has nothing to do with us. Like what I've experienced in my life has nothing to do with you. So I might think something, but that might not necessarily be true because you have your own path and your own things and my own things. So, it's hard. You get into this kind of over analysis by paralysis feeling a lot of times when you're putting yourself out there, because you're looking and analyzing at yourself, and it doesn't help that the algorithms and all the dopamine and everything else that creates this roller coaster of emotions that a lot of creators experience. A lot of people who are not even, full-time creators, those who are creating for others, those who are working in agencies, those who are social media managers, those who are on these platforms that, it definitely impacts how you think in your brain too.
I'm going to totally embarrass myself for a moment, but not really. I'm watching Love Island Beyond the Villa right now.
Okay. I don't know it.
Well, what I'll tell you is that what I'm seeing with these like people who are becoming overnight celebrities basically, and kind of like being thrown into the creator world because they showed up on this show, I'm seeing a lot of them have a lot of issues with imposter syndrome, anxiety, like a lot of they come out in this show. I actually haven't seen this on shows before, and I think it's because a lot of the time on these reality shows you see them the one time and then you see how they show up online, but you don't know what's happening behind the screen. In this case, they're showing up on the show talking about after being in that situation and now all of the feedback from people outside and all of this, and it creates this feeling of imposter syndrome and all of these other things that are showing up that they wouldn't have experienced had they not been in the spotlight. I want to ask you about the distinction between performative visibility, where you're like showing up and performing, versus like having real confidence and real authority and showing up in a way that like you are so confident in who you are and what you are here to do on this planet. What is the difference between being performative and being like authentically real and feeling it to your core?
Well, I think you can be both. And I'll tell you why. So I think being performative in the social media realm is you're performing for an algorithm and you're creating content for whatever the algorithm is, whether it's Instagram or LinkedIn or TikTok, you are putting on a performance based on that. So that's bucket number one. Bucket number two is being confident into your core and doing the things that you say. A lot of times, what I've been hearing recently is people are hiring people from platforms like Instagram or LinkedIn, coaches that haven't actually done the work of the topics that they post about, which is a real thing. And it's a risk when you hire someone who you don't know and haven't been referred by someone. It is a risk for everyone to hire someone that way. It shouldn't be, but it is. But there is, to me, you can do both. It's just a choice if you want to put the energy in to appeal to the algorithms. A lot of people spend so much time doing research on, these different spaces, right? So we'll use LinkedIn as an example. I mean, I've spent thousands of hours doing research on LinkedIn, not only for my own content, but for my clients as well and advising. And the algorithms change every year. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And it's not just one. And no one really knows, even the engineers at LinkedIn don't really know when things are changing and how things are changing. They just know when the changes have been made and they can talk about it at that point. But you can still put on the show, if you will, where you can, if you understand and your account has the history and you understand how to use the platform, it is still somewhat of a performance for the algorithm, even if you are confident in who you are and you have done the work and all those things. When you start feeling, and use myself as an example, there was a period for me for like 6 or 8 months where I was really burnt out from content. I was posting twice a day, like 7 days a week. And I was really struggling with the AI content because I've been using AI for several years and I use it as an editor. I don't write my content with it, but I use it to edit my content. And I use it for ideation, for whether it's asset ideation. I use it for copywriting, not just for myself, also for clients. And when other people started posting the exact same content that I was posting, I was very confused and it made me very frustrated because I felt that I was being plagiarized. But the truth is that it's really a compliment when someone is posting content and it's similar to yours, or if it's similar to something that you've done in the past. And I was really struggling with, how do I get my voice and how do I really talk through this? Because at that point, I didn't feel rude, even though I'm doing the work. I'm doing the work with clients. I wrote a book about it, talking about it, and I'm posting about it. I didn't really feel that I was making the impact that I wanted because I was performing for the algorithm, because I just was trying to get the dopamine hits. And so how I worked through it was I did a dopamine detox for about 6 weeks. I didn't post anything. I still had clients that I was working on, so I was still kind of in the LinkedIn. I wasn't doing it myself, but I was still significantly cut back. And I started putting together stories, client stories, case studies, situations. And now I have it as a part of my routine where every single week I take 3 hours and I just do like a thought data dump into my computer or into my phone or into Plod. I have one of those recorders that listens to, it's an AI that you talk into and it just sends you all the stuff. And for me, that was the way that I worked through it. And that's the way that I would suggest anybody work through it, is to really hone in on why they're there and find those stories that really help them.
I think we can all use a detox at some point. I detoxed for Lent. I did a no scrolling for 40 days and it changed me. I will say I was at a point where I would unconsciously, every time I get up at my desk, I like go to Instagram, or I'm like bored in a meeting and I like go to Instagram, and I was like, this is not healthy. And then the other thing is all the negativity in my algorithms. I like get down all the rabbit holes and all of the conspiracy theories and all of the bad news in the world. Like the detox was absolutely critical. So that's helpful, I think, for people that are struggling with, I think, being too focused on the scrolling and not focused enough on the creation. Just detox from it, because then actually I started creating more for my business. I came up with my framework. I did all of this stuff because I couldn't scroll. So if somebody's like stuck in not being able to create because they're so consumed by scrolling, maybe just detox. The other thing that I'm noticing that you talked about a lot is how you've done the work for yourself, at which point you can then help clients. I see a lot of people online who, whether or not they actually are doing what they're preaching is questionable. Like there's this one coach I see online that coaches coaches, but all of her content is just I don't know. I'm not convinced is what I'm saying. I would be very cautious about who you work with if you don't know that they've actually done whatever they're selling you. So that's interesting. I'm now showing up online in ways that I never did. And certainly there's all the opinions and all the things. But I would love to hear your opinion on this, which is, what are the subtle ways people give away their authority when they start building visibility or start being visible? What are some of those subtle things that they might be doing that's giving away their authority or making them seem like they are being performative? They haven't actually done the work. Like, what is your perspective on that?
The one thing that really jumps out to me in response to that is just someone who deeply discounts themselves and their services, because I don't believe that our value should be less based on a perceived influence.
Yeah. I think the automatic thing is that we just want clients. So we're like, oh, well, we'll get clients at any cost possible. But then that does affect the value that you have.
Right, exactly. And listen, everyone has to start somewhere, but a lot of times you're going to hear a lot of no's before you get the yes. And, everyone is worthy of the value that they bring to the table.
You've shared that you've had a lot of adversity in your journey. What would you say that those experiences taught you about yourself and the narrative that you were telling yourself? And how have you pivoted to now who you are today?
So I think early on, when I first started showing up online, I was very self-conscious and I was very concerned about what was going to happen around me. And I was concerned about what other people were thinking and saying. For context, I would go into a meeting and they would be talking about me in front of me, like withholding, their app on their phone and, saying things. And I wish at the time I could have laughed it off instead of feeling really self-conscious about it. And I could have been, but I was, I wasn't confident in who I was, but I did it anyway because confidence is what happens when you go through it. And that's really where I am today, where if someone was making fun of me to my face, I would probably laugh at them because they don't get it and they never will. And the people that I'm sitting with, A, don't talk about other people in a negative way, number one. And B, they support other people that are doing the things, because if you've done anything, if you built anything, you know that you have to start somewhere and you have to be a beginner. And so being a beginner now is something that's exciting for me because I know that on the other side, it's going to be freaking incredible. And that's really what it's brought me to today.
I love that, because I know people are talking shit behind my back on all of me showing up and me creating. And you want to know what? I don't care. I truly don't care. I think it also comes with age though. Like as I'm getting older, I really just am not giving an F about it. And then also it's been hard to get a seat at the table at times. So I'm building my own fucking table, and I'm not going to let anyone hold me back from that. What did you have to let go of in order to now move forward? So there's a lot of things that I think we all hold on to. What are some of the things you had to let go of to now move past the fear and the doubt and the concern about potentially what other people think?
I just had to let go of caring about what other people think. I mean, that was the biggest thing. You can't control what other people think about you. You can only control how you respond to other people. And that is the bottom line for everyone. I mean, it's okay to be a beginner. It's okay to start. It's okay to mess up. At least you're trying. I started running in these races a few years ago. I started running in marathons, and the one thing people would be like, oh, so what's your time? What's your time? What's your time? And I felt like saying, you know what? 1% of the population are actually like running and running races. And even a smaller percentage are actually finishing those races. And so for me, it's not necessarily about the time. It's about the fact that I started and I finished. And it's a lot more than most people can say. A lot of people are just really unhappy right now and have been unhappy pretty much since 2020. I mean, it's very in your face how people are very unhappy. So, letting go of the perception of what other people think about you. You think about you the way that you want to think about you, and that's how you are. And then you surround yourself with people who feel the same way.
Yeah. So for anyone who's listening to this and they're like, okay, personal brand, I gotta build it. Showing up, gotta do it. Caring about people think, gotta let that go. What would you say is like one decision, one step, one thing they can do today to move forward on some of the concepts and ideas that we've talked about today?
Buy a domain with your name in it, right? So I bought melanieborden.com in 2016. Buy the domain for your name. That would be step one. Number two, buy the domain for the company you want to create one day also. That would be my first place to start.
Yeah. I started my Instagram with Laura Lynn Cologne, I don't know, way long before I even started using it. And I've had a website for a long time, way before I started. It took me a long time to get that thing set up. So anyway, I love that advice. It's something that I had to do myself. And it's almost like foreshadowing. It's like, I know I'm going to do this one day, but I have to start somewhere. I love that. Okay, Melanie. So the last thing I'll ask is there any other advice that you would share before we end today for anyone who's out there playing small, knows they're capable of more, and is ready to break past their limits? Any advice you would share for them?
No one is thinking about you as much as you are thinking about yourself. Everybody is consumed with themselves. So whatever you think, other people are going to think about you. And that's why you're really not doing the thing that you want to do. And like deep down in your soul, you know it. Just do it because everyone is focused on themselves. So focus on yourself.
Well, Melanie, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you're super busy. Melanie has been on a lot of podcasts, and now I'm so thrilled to have had her as a guest on the Inspired Authority podcast. For everyone listening, if this conversation hit, it wasn't by accident. It means that you were meant to get going. So you're being called to do more. Get out there and do it. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, and then of course, share it with somebody who might need to hear it. Thank you again, Melanie, and we will see you all soon.